And now I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop with you. So in just a moment, you're going to see your screen change over to my non-existing desktop. This is sometimes what you get when you come back from lunch. Technology for you. But the TurningPoint Anywhere software, of course, is what we're talking about today. And before I open up this software, just let me go ahead and talk a little bit about it. The TurningPoint Anywhere software is a standalone application that does not integrate with anything else whatsoever. It doesn't integrate with anything, but it will run in conjunction with anything. So basically, we can be doing anything on our computer. We can have just a desktop up. We can be running a video. We can be on a PowerPoint, PDF, web page. It doesn't matter. We can bring this TurningPoint Anywhere application over top of anything else that we're working with and always use it in a polling environment. So at this time, we'll go ahead and open up that TurningPoint Anywhere application. And what you're going to notice is that it just opens up this floating show bar that appears in the upper right-hand corner of my page. Now with this floating show bar, as you can see, it appears over top of anything else, and I can drag it anywhere on the screen that I wish. Now with my training today, I'm going to talk about this TurningPoint Anywhere being used in 3 separate environments. The first environment in which somebody would use TurningPoint Anywhere is very basic, very informal, and that's if you just want to ask your students or participants a verbal question. So if I just want to ask individuals in the audience a verbal question, I don't need to have anything prepared ahead of time. I can just go ahead, open up the application, ask the question, open and close polling to see the results automatically. The second environment that we're going to go ahead and discuss is using TurningPoint Anywhere over top of another application. So if we're using it over top of another application, we have the opportunity of generating reports with screenshots where we can see exactly what was on the screen at the time the polling shut down. And then the third environment that we're going to talk about today is using what's called a question list. So if any of you are familiar with our flagship product, which is TurningPoint, you know that you build the questions in advance through slides. Well, we're not building any slides here, but we do build the questions in advance through the TurningPoint Anywhere software. And of course, some of the ancillary things that we'll cover today is the hardware. So we'll talk about response cards. We'll also talk about the receivers. And we're also going to go ahead and discuss how to create a participant list to track individual student or participant results. All right, so let's get right to that first environment, and that is asking verbal questions. So right now I do have a receiver plugged into my USB ports, and sitting right in front of me I have 4 response cards. Let's talk about the scenario where I just asked my participants a verbal question, and after the verbal question is asked, I'm going to come up here at my floating show bar and click on what's called the play button, which is to the far left-hand side. It's basically just a right-pointing arrow. When I click on this button, you can now see that polling has opened up. So with this verbal question, each person in the audience is going to go ahead and click one button on their response card to respond to the question. As soon as they do respond to the question, I can see the responses coming in real time. Once I can see that everybody has responded to the question, the same button that I opened up polling with, I'm now going to click on to shut down polling. So as soon as I click on the close button, you can now see that the results do appear over top of anything else. Now my results are appearing over top of the entire screen. Keep in mind that this can be adjusted, so if you shrink this down to appear maybe half of the screen, that's the way that it's always going to appear. Okay, so I have mine appearing full screen, but it won't look like that if you don't want it to. That can be adjusted. But to recap again, I just plugged in my receiver. My participants had a response card. I asked a verbal question. I manually opened the polling by clicking the play button. They responded to it, and the same button that I opened polling with, I clicked to close polling, and it automatically showed up the results on the screen. Now sticking with this same environment, if I just ask another verbal question and open up the polling, I have a tab just to the right of this called Charts. If I click on Charts, this gives me the opportunity of seeing the results coming in as my students or participants are answering the question. So as they're answering the question, I can see the fluctuation of the results. So this is something called dynamic polling. Now this doesn't shut down the polling. My polling is still open at this time. So it's going to take the click of that tab, which is the close tab, and now this will give me my static results. So this is the Charts button where I can see the results coming in real time once the polling opens up. Are there any questions so far in terms of just asking verbal questions where you can manually open the polling, manually close the polling, and you see the results appear automatically? Okay, you guys, I am getting a little bit of background noise. It sounds like with the computer. So if you wouldn't mind possibly putting it on mute if you're able to, really appreciate that. Thank you. Now, we're still going to stick with this verbal questioning environment. So let's say I just asked another verbal question, and I'm going to click my play button. So polling is opened up. When polling is open on a question, in the lower left-hand corner of this show bar, I have something called a main menu drop-down arrow. When I click this, this is basically where all of my functionality is located within the TurningPoint Anywhere software. A few things that I want to go ahead and point out from here. The first thing being the countdown timer. So I can insert a countdown timer when polling is opened up on a question, which is going to set a limit to how long the participants have to answer this question. So if I click on the countdown, it now brings it in.
Okay.
And with this countdown time,
set, right? Can you guys hear this?
Yes, yeah, we're going to hear you loud and clear.
Here.
All right, with the countdown timer, this is functional. So we can go ahead and add 5 seconds if necessary. We can go ahead and subtract. And we can also go ahead and click a pause button to allow the participants a little bit more time to respond to the question. But of course, when this countdown timer reaches 0, it's going to automatically shut down my polling and display my results. Now, we're going to go ahead and pause it right now. Hold on 1 second, please. Okay, so we have it paused right now, and there are a couple other things I want to go ahead and display with this drop-down menu. The first thing is coming down to where it reads View. And over on the right-hand side, I have a drop-down menu, and I can go ahead and insert what's called a response grid. With the response grid, I can see who has currently responded to this question. So right now, since I am not using what's called a participant list where individuals are responding, it's just displaying the device IDs on the back of the card. And as each device responds to the question, the box correlating with that device is going to go ahead and light up, which gives me confirmation that they have responded to it. If I were using something called a participant list instead of showing device IDs, I'm going to be able to see individual names. Now also with this drop-down menu, coming down the view, I have something called a non-response grid. This does just the opposite. It's going to start with everybody in there. And as individuals respond to the question, the name or device ID associated with them will disappear. So only the individuals who have not yet responded will remain in this response grid. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue with the polling here. It's going to reach 0, and it's going to go ahead and shut it down. And we automatically get the results. Okay, guys, so I do want to recap real quick, and you're going to find out that I recap quite a few times, because I like to make sure that there is no gaps in terms of what it is that we're covering, and if there are, I do urge you to go ahead and ask questions. You know, we can make this very informal if you'd like. So first of all, we plugged in a receiver to the USB ports. I have 4 response cards in front of me. Practical situation, the participants out there will all have their own response card. I ask a verbal question. I manually open up the polling. When polling is open, I could click the charts button, which shows me results coming in real time. Also, when polling is open, I can insert this countdown timer, which sets a limit, and I can also insert a response and a non-response grid, where if I am using a participant list, I can see right now who has responded to the question and who has not yet responded. Shut down polling when I get the results, and of course, if I had any results, I would see and appear automatically right over top of anything else that I have open on the screen. Any questions at this point in terms of asking verbal questions, inserting countdown timers, or inserting those response or non-response grids? Now, when your presentation is 100% complete, so let's say I'm all done, I just asked 3 or 4 questions, now I need to continue on and click the drop-down menu and come down to where it reads Session. Remember this, I'm asking verbal questions, so technically, my software has no idea what those verbal questions actually were. So I can come over here to where it reads Session Viewer, and when I click on Session Viewer, notice that it reads Question 1, Question 2, and Question 3. That's because I opened and closed polling 3 times. So if I wanted to, I could type out each one of those questions, type out each one of those answer choices, and set a correct and incorrect answer choice if I wanted to.